Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week was filled with news about the upcoming Apple event, iPhone 13 news we haven't heard before, and much more. This is your news update for the week of August 29th, 2021. And the first thing has to do with iPhone 12 series devices. Apple launched a repair program. I mentioned this in my iOS 15 Beta 7 follow-up video yesterday, but this is the repair program for no sound issues. So if you're having this problem with your phone and you're not having sound come out of the speakers properly, it may be eligible for a free repair. I'll link this website in the description below so you can check it out, but you'll see it gives you the option to check for an Apple authorized service provider, a retail store, or to contact them to arrange mail-in service via an Apple repair center. So this is available now. They launched this past week, and if you're having that problem, I would definitely check it out. Now, the next thing is there was an AirTag update. There's an AirTag firmware update, but Apple never tells us what's in it or what it does. The new firmware is 1.0.291 with a build number of 1A291A. And unfortunately, there's no way to really update these. You can check for the firmware in the Find My app. Go to Find My, and in Find My, if you tap on the item itself, you can see the firmware version at the top. If you tap this, it says 1.0.276. I'm not on the latest firmware update, and unfortunately, there's no way to easily force it to look for you, but it is available now. If you have AirTags, you'll eventually have them just update on their own. But again, we don't really know what's in that update, but the AirTags do keep getting them. Whether or not that just improves their overall visibility on the Find My network or something else, we just don't know, but there is that update. Hopefully someday in the future, we'll have the option to actually update it ourselves. Now, Apple recently acquired PrimePhonic with classical music streaming, so it will be coming to Apple Music a little bit later. They announced this today, and as you can see, it says Apple acquires classical music streaming service PrimePhonic. It's coming to Apple Music. They didn't give a date, but we can expect that fairly soon, I would think, as they can integrate their library into Apple Music or a separate app or whatever they have planned. But they did acquire them, so that's a possibility fairly soon. Now, Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, has been there for 10 years now. So he's been there the past 10 years and recently received $750 million worth of stock, or about 5 million shares, and they give him stock every so often to keep him as CEO. It's an incentive. It's pretty typical throughout the industries, and it will keep him CEO until at least 2025. So he's currently the CEO. He's done a pretty good job making them a very successful company. Now, during his time, he launched the Apple Watch as well as many different iPhones, but hopefully we'll see one more category, maybe Apple Glass or something else in the future. But he'll be there for a little while, and then whether or not he's there after that is hard to say, but currently, he'll be CEO until 2025. Now, with all of the different leaks coming out about iPhone 13 and much more, Apple is currently working on securing that information being leaked by the supply chain to keep future products more of a surprise. This is something that, as much as I like to see things ahead of time, it's better to be a little bit surprised, at least by a few products, by the time they launch. That was one of the great appeals of Apple, is we wouldn't really know a whole lot about the device. Earlier on with the iPhone, many people speculated we would have an iPhone with the first generation, but no one really knew what it looked like, and that made us all surprised and really blown away by its touchscreen. So it's something I would like to see a little more secrecy with less information out there, and hopefully they can secure those things. Now, as far as the upcoming iPhone 13 Apple event, where Apple's expected to show off the iPhone 13 and the Apple Watch Series 7, it's said to be fairly soon. In fact, I would expect invites as soon as next week, with the event being on the 13th or 14th, with pre-sales of the iPhone 13 available on the 17th. Now, some people have said the iPhone will launch on the 17th, but as far as we know, it seems like maybe pre-orders on the 17th, with them coming live to the market on the 24th, where you'd be able to go to the store and get one if they're available. So that seems to make the most sense. And then also AirPods would be coming on the 30th, according to the Chinese site IT Home. So the AirPods 3 update are said to launch alongside that, coming at that event as well. Now, there's no mention of the Apple Watch and when it could launch, but generally alongside the iPhone or a little bit later, or maybe even earlier. But it looks like we're going to have that event very, very soon. Invites next week with an event on the 13th or 14th of September. That's basically what Apple does every year. So I can't wait to see what they have. And there's some surprises with the iPhone 13. Something that I sort of forgot about. A few years back in 2019, Mark Gurman mentioned that Apple had a separate team working on LEO satellite communication to allow for calls and texts without any cellular coverage. So Mark Gurman had mentioned that Apple was looking into new ways to beam data, such as internet connectivity, directly to phones without the need of a cellular network. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, this is coming to iPhone 13. This would be a huge surprise and definitely welcome if you're in a remote area and you don't have good cell coverage, and maybe you could bypass cell coverage altogether. But according to Ming-Chi Kuo, this is something that will be in iPhone 13. So we'll have to wait and see if it's really in this device, and maybe it's a big thing or a one more thing that we haven't seen in some time, but it looks like that's coming very, very soon. Now, iPhone 13 is said to feature a smaller notch as well as some advanced Face ID hardware that could work while you're wearing a mask or maybe have foggy glasses, according to John Prosser. Now, we know Apple's working on new Face ID hardware to make the notch smaller, and you can see sort of what the display will look like. This is a model of the iPhone 13, but you can see that the speaker has been moved to the top and the camera is in a little bit different location, allowing for a different sort of notch and hopefully better Face ID hardware. So no longer would you need an Apple Watch to sort of verify it's you when unlocking with an iPhone wearing a mask. It would just work because of advanced Face ID hardware. This is also possibly in response to Apple may be working on Touch ID devices where they started to implement Touch ID in the new iPad Air that I have here, and instead of bringing that to new iPhones, they found a better way to use Face ID. Now, I would still prefer Touch ID, but it's said not to be coming with iPhone 13 models. So hopefully we'll see sort of some Touch ID integration into maybe an iPhone SE 3 or something else. But right now it looks like Apple's sort of put Touch ID pushed off a little bit instead of on the iPhone 13 models. I was hoping to see that, but again, we don't know for sure, and it could be a bit of a surprise. Now, also, it's said that the iPhone 13 is going to offer two new colors. One would be a matte black, or something similar to what we had with the iPhone 5 with this matte color, or iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. So I would love to see a matte black or flat black color, and they're also said to be offering a bronze color this year. So instead of Pacific Blue, maybe they'll offer bronze. The year before Pacific Blue, we had a green color, and so they do seem to change it up every year, and that seems to make sense if they had something like that. So we could see new options, and also we could see a price increase. Now, originally it was said that the iPhone 13 would not have a price increase over the iPhone 12 models, but it looks like there could be a price increase because TSMC, the maker of the chipsets inside, is said to be raising the prices a little bit due to the cost of materials and labor overall. They supply Apple with not only the iPhone chips, but also the M1 Apple Silicon chips. So it may be costing them more to make, so they're going to charge Apple more, and in turn, Apple will bring that down to the customer. So we could see a price increase, but again, we won't know this until they actually launch them. We saw a price increase a little bit now that we have 5G antennas with millimeter wave, and we could see an additional one due to the internal chipsets. So we'll have to wait and see if we have that, but there's no knowing until Apple actually announces it from the stage. Now, iOS 15 Beta 8 is expected this week. We're on a weekly cycle with these releases of iOS 15. Last Wednesday, we had iOS 15 Beta 7, and so I would expect iOS 15 Beta 8 this Tuesday or Wednesday. Generally, they do this every year up to the release of the final version or public version of the next operating system. So on the 31st or the 1st of September, we could see iOS 15 Beta 8 with maybe a release candidate the week after that and a final release the following week. Usually the release of the pre-orders of the iPhone or the week after is when the final version goes live for everyone to download. So we're only a couple weeks out until we see iOS 15 released to the public. And also many people keep asking about iOS 14.8 since we've seen it in Xcode. It seems like we will probably have that update with the option just to get security updates if you don't want to move to iOS 15. And I'm surprised we haven't seen that yet, but we could see maybe a beta 1 this week or maybe a final version. Last year, Apple had a beta 1 about a week ago based off year over year. And then this week, last year, they released iOS 13.7 to the public. So we could see a 14.8 with sort of a final bug fix and maybe some security updates and things as well. Or we may never see it at all and they'll just default everything to iOS 15. Apple has changed their plans in the past, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that. Now, the Series 7 Apple Watch, which should be a little bit of a redesign with more squared off edges, is showing up in China as a clone already, and that was shown by Duan Rui on Twitter and Majin Buu on Twitter. They showed different copies of them where they're already showing up, and typically this happens with new products from Apple where there'll be clones out before the final release. So we've seen that before, and it looks like this is probably what it's going to look like. So we'll have a redesigned Apple Watch, no circular display, and we'll also have larger displays than we have with the current Apple Watch, 41 and 45 millimeters, which in turn would give us different watch faces, maybe a little bit more room, and according to Mark Gurman, some new watch faces, which seems to make sense. We'll have some new watch faces with watchOS 8 and more watch faces linked to the new Apple Watch. That's typically what Apple does every single year. And then finally, with the upcoming MacBooks, the M1X MacBooks, it looks like they could have a price hike according to some. Now, hopefully we don't see that, as Apple didn't really raise them much with the M1 MacBook Pro, this 13-inch that I'm holding here, but we could see a price hike with the upcoming M1X Pro version due to that chip cost that I mentioned earlier with the iPhones as well. So maybe that will affect it and make it a little bit more expensive. Either way, they have raised them in the past, so it makes sense, but I hope they keep it fairly reasonable compared to what we have, maybe a lower-end model with much higher-end specs with some different options as well. And so that's everything for this past week's news. Of course, I'm looking forward to that Apple event, as many of you are, as well as what iPhone 13 really has to offer with hopefully better cameras. Not that they're bad, but even increasing their capability would be something I would love to see, as I'd love to use the iPhone cameras more and more to make videos like this. Also an enhanced display with ProMotion. I talked about that a little bit before, and then maybe some surprise products as well. I'm looking forward to everything they have by the end of this year. We're really ramping up toward that time of year where we have a ton of products coming out. Let me know what you're most excited about, though, in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already, though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.